He was 8 years old when he learned a painful truth. You can grow up in one of the richest countries in the world and still feel completely invisible. Outside, Canada looked perfect. Clean streets, tall glass buildings, expensive cars passing quietly in the snow. But inside a damp basement apartment on the edge of the city, reality felt very different. The heater rattled loudly at night. The walls smelled of old moisture. His mother worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. There was no father to guide him, no safety net, no wealthy relatives. Just a tired woman and a boy who watched everything carefully. At school, he noticed the difference immediately. Other kids had branded jackets, new backpacks, and stories about family vacations. He had hand-me-downs and silence. When teachers asked what his parents did, he avoided details. When classmates talked about weekend plans, he stayed quiet. He was not jealous, he was observant. He saw something clearly: wealth was not evenly distributed, even in a rich country. One evening, while sitting near the small basement window watching snow fall under a streetlight, he made a quiet decision. If the world would not notice him, he would build something so strong it could not be ignored. He did not yet know how, but the thought planted itself deeply in his mind. What he did not know that night was that the cold basement would become the birthplace of one of Canada's future financial empires, and the next few years would test him harder than he could imagine. By age 10, he understood responsibility in ways most children never do. His mother left before sunrise and returned after dark. Some mornings he prepared his own breakfast. Some evenings he reheated leftovers alone. The silence of the basement became normal. But instead of feeling abandoned, he felt aware. He watched his mother's exhaustion carefully. He noticed how she counted money at the kitchen table. He noticed how stress sat quietly in her eyes. At school, he struggled with confidence. His accent made him hesitate before speaking. A few kids laughed when he mispronounced words. He learned quickly that embarrassment can either break you or build you. So he chose to study harder. He stayed in the school library longer than anyone else. Books became his refuge. Biographies fascinated him. Stories of people who started with nothing and built industries. He began asking powerful questions. Why do some people stay poor for generations while others rise? Is it luck, intelligence, opportunity, or something deeper? He did not fully understand the answers yet. But he sensed something important. Knowledge changes direction. One winter afternoon, as he walked home through heavy snow, his shoes soaked and cold, he whispered to himself, "This will not be forever." That sentence became his internal anchor. And soon, teenage years would arrive, bringing with them both temptation and transformation. High school introduced a new battlefield: social pressure, identity confusion, financial comparison. By 14, he felt the invisible divide more clearly. Some classmates drove cars gifted by parents. Some wore watches worth more than his family's monthly rent. He worked after school shoveling snow, mowing lawns, and delivering flyers. Money was not for luxury, it was for survival. Yet something powerful was forming inside him: discipline. While others scrolled through social media late at night, he read about business. While others complained about boredom, he searched for opportunity. He discovered stories of entrepreneurs who built companies from small rooms and broken beginnings. For the first time, business did not feel distant. It felt possible. One evening, after finishing a long shift clearing snow from driveways, he sat at the kitchen table with frozen hands and opened an old second-hand laptop. The screen flickered. The Wi-Fi was slow. But the internet opened a new world: e-commerce, digital markets, online sales. He realized something shocking. You did not need a fancy office to start. You needed understanding. That night he did not just browse, he studied. And unknowingly he had just stepped into the path that would one day make him one of the richest men in Canada. But first, he would have to fail repeatedly. His first online store was a disaster. Poor design, weak product descriptions, almost no visitors. He invested small savings into online ads and watched them disappear without results. For weeks, nothing happened. Silence again. Doubt returned. Maybe this was foolish. Maybe business was only for people with connections and capital, but quitting would mean accepting the basement as permanent, and he refused to accept that. Instead of giving up, he analyzed everything. He studied marketing psychology, he improved branding, he learned about consumer trust. Slowly, traffic increased. Then, one night, a notification appeared, first sale. It was small, but it was proof. Someone, somewhere in Canada, trusted his store. He did not celebrate loudly. He sat quietly, staring at the screen, understanding something profound. The world had just responded to his effort, not to his background, not to his father's absence, to his work. But one sale does not build wealth, and scaling would require a mindset far beyond teenage excitement. What happened next would determine whether this was luck or the beginning of a financial empire. That first sale did not change his life overnight, but it changed his belief system forever. For the first time, effort had translated directly into income, without a boss, without connections, without privilege. The basement no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a headquarters. At 16, while most of his classmates were chasing trends and weekend parties, he was chasing conversion rates and customer behavior. He reinvested every dollar back into the business. No new clothes, no celebrations, just growth. But growth is never smooth. Some weeks, sales doubled. Other weeks they dropped without warning. He learned quickly that online business is emotional warfare. One failed ad campaign could erase days of progress. Yet instead of reacting with panic, he developed discipline. He began tracking data carefully. He studied why customers abandoned carts. He refined product descriptions. He tested different pricing strategies. Each mistake became education. Meanwhile, school life continued. Teachers saw a quiet student. Classmates saw an introvert. Nobody saw the late nights, the spreadsheets, the pressure. He carried two identities, student by day, entrepreneur by night. The duality strengthened him. Then one month, revenue crossed a number that shocked even him. It was more than his mother earned in several months combined. When he showed her the dashboard, she did not understand the analytics, but she understood relief. For the first time, hope entered that basement fully. But hope creates responsibility. And scaling beyond survival would require something far more dangerous than hard work. It would require risk. At 17, he made a bold decision. Instead of running a small store, he would build a brand, a real one, not just trending products, identity. He understood something many adults never do. Trends fade, but trust scales. So he redesigned everything. Professional logo, stronger messaging, better product quality. He invested more money than ever before, money that took months to earn. The risk felt terrifying. If it failed, he would return to zero. He studied Canadian consumer behavior deeply. What do people value? Speed, reliability, authenticity. He improved shipping times. He wrote honest product descriptions. He focused on customer service as if each buyer were family. The results were slow at first, then steady, then explosive. Orders started coming from across provinces: British Columbia, Alberta, Quebec, Ontario. He was no longer a teenager with a hobby, he was operating a real company. But success attracts attention. Competitors began copying his products. Advertising costs increased. The market became crowded. He realized that staying small was no longer safe. To survive, he would have to think bigger than he ever imagined. And the next move he made would separate him from thousands of others chasing the same digital dream. Graduation approached, and pressure followed. University acceptance letters arrived. Teachers encouraged safe careers, engineering, finance, law. Friends discussed campus life and dorm rooms. But his business was now generating serious revenue. He stood at a crossroads few teenagers ever face. One path promised security, the other promised scale. He walked alone many nights, thinking deeply about the future. He respected education, but he also respected momentum. Opportunity does not always wait politely, it rewards courage. After weeks of reflection, he chose an unconventional route. He would postpone university and commit fully to his company. It was not rebellion, it was strategy. His mother supported him quietly. She trusted his discipline more than she trusted tradition. With full focus now directed at growth, he expanded aggressively. He hired freelancers, built systems, automated processes. Revenue climbed into the millions. But with growth came pressure. Employees depended on him. Customers expected consistency. One mistake could damage everything. He was no longer fighting poverty. He was protecting expansion. And just as confidence peaked, an unexpected economic shift would test his resilience on a level far greater than teenage doubt ever had. The economic slowdown hit like a silent storm. Consumer spending tightened. Advertising platforms changed algorithms. Revenue dipped sharply. For the first time since scaling, he felt instability again. Millions were moving, but unpredictably, this was no longer a basement experiment. This was a company with payroll, contracts, obligations. Instead of reacting emotionally, he returned to basics: data analysis, cost control, efficiency. He diversified marketing channels, strengthened email retention systems, focused on loyal customers instead of constant acquisition. Many competitors collapsed under pressure. They had grown fast but built weak foundations. He had grown slower but stronger. Months of strategic adaptation stabilized the company. Not only did revenue recover, but margins improved. Crisis had refined him. By his mid-20s, valuations began rising rapidly. Investors noticed. Financial publications began mentioning his name. The quiet boy from the basement was becoming a serious player in Canada's business landscape. But wealth at this level introduces a new challenge: ego. And whether he controlled it or it controlled him would determine whether he became successful or legendary. By 26, the numbers were no longer small enough to ignore. Revenue reports crossed 8 figures annually. Warehouses expanded, teams grew, systems matured. What began in a damp basement had now become a structured operation with departments, managers, and long-term strategy. Investors began requesting meetings. Venture capital firms wanted in. Journalists called him one of Canada's fastest rising entrepreneurs. But praise is dangerous when it arrives too early. He remembered the silence of poverty. He remembered walking home with wet socks in winter. That memory protected him. While others might have celebrated excessively, he doubled down on discipline. He reviewed financial statements personally. He studied macroeconomic trends. He questioned assumptions in meetings. He understood something critical: scale magnifies mistakes. Behind closed doors, pressure intensified. Payroll now meant dozens of families depended on his decisions. Inventory errors could cost millions. Competitors were watching closely, ready to copy any weakness. He could no longer operate like a hustler. He had to operate like a strategist. Instead of chasing hype, he invested in infrastructure. Better logistics, stronger legal protection, data-driven forecasting, long-term brand equity. He turned short-term wins into durable systems. By 28, valuation discussions reached levels that would have once felt absurd. Financial analysts started comparing him to established Canadian moguls. But he knew valuation is not wealth. Ownership is. And the next decision he made, whether to sell or scale, would determine whether he became temporarily rich or permanently powerful. Acquisition offers began arriving quietly. Private equity firms proposed buyouts. Large corporations hinted at partnerships. The numbers were life-changing. He could sell, secure generational wealth instantly, and step away before risk increased. For a moment, temptation felt real. But he asked himself a difficult question. Did he build this to exit quickly or to dominate long-term? Selling would end the pressure. Scaling would multiply it. He walked through his warehouse one evening after employees had left, rows of products stacked high, machines humming softly. The air smelled like cardboard and ambition. He remembered shoveling snow at 14. He remembered counting coins for bus fare. Those memories did not align with a quick exit. He declined the offers. Instead, he reinvested aggressively, expanded internationally, entered new markets, acquired smaller competitors who were struggling, diversified product lines, strengthened leadership. Risk increased dramatically, but so did control. Within 2 years, company valuation doubled, then doubled again. The decision to refuse a safe exit changed everything. Now, financial publications were no longer asking if he would become wealthy. They were asking how high his empire could climb. And as the company approached a valuation that placed him among the wealthiest entrepreneurs in Canada, something unexpected began to change inside him. Success at scale feels different than early survival. The fear of poverty disappears, but the fear of collapse grows louder. At 30, he was now officially ranked among Canada's richest self-made entrepreneurs under 40. Net worth estimates crossed into billions. Media headlines labeled him the basement billionaire. But he did not feel different. He still woke up early, still reviewed performance metrics, still questioned aggressive spending. The wealth was real, but so was responsibility. With influence came scrutiny. Critics emerged. Some claimed luck, others said timing. Few understood the decade of discipline behind the numbers. He expanded his vision beyond profit. He invested in Canadian startups, funded tech incubators, created mentorship programs for immigrant youth. He remembered how lonely the journey felt without guidance. He wanted to change that for others. But influence also attracts ego. Invitations to exclusive events multiplied. Political connections formed. Wealth circles opened their doors. The world that once ignored him now wanted proximity. And at this level, the greatest threat was no longer competition. It was losing the hunger that built everything. He made a conscious decision that few wealthy men make. He would protect humility like an asset. Instead of expanding his lifestyle endlessly, he expanded his impact. He built scholarship programs for low-income families. He funded digital education initiatives across underserved Canadian communities. He believed wealth should circulate, not stagnate. But he never romanticized success. He spoke openly about the loneliness, the stress, the sleepless nights. He reminded audiences that discipline is boring. Consistency is repetitive. Growth is uncomfortable. The highlight reel hides the grind. When asked during an interview what the turning point of his life was, he did not mention the billion-dollar valuation. He mentioned the night he refused to quit after his first failed ad campaign. That was the real shift. From basement child to billionaire was not a miracle. It was accumulated discipline applied daily for over a decade. And as he stood on a stage speaking to thousands of young dreamers across Canada, he ended with one simple truth. Rich countries do not automatically create rich lives. Discipline does. And somewhere in that audience, another quiet boy was listening, preparing to start his own rise. Wealth did not slow him down. It sharpened him. By his mid-30s, his name appeared on lists ranking the wealthiest individuals in Canada. Business magazines compared his rise to tech legends, but they missed something deeper. His success was not built on hype, venture capital luck, or viral trends. It was built on structure, on systems, on relentless self-discipline practiced long before anyone was watching. He began restructuring his empire to survive decades, not headlines. He created independent boards, strengthened compliance, built leadership pipelines so the company would not collapse if he stepped away. He understood something most young entrepreneurs ignore. Real power is not control, it is sustainability. At the same time, he became more private. He limited interviews, reduced social media exposure, focused on execution. While others chased public attention, he chased operational excellence. His competitors were loud, he was quiet. But inside, he still carried the memory of that cold apartment, the small heater, the unpaid bills. That memory remained his compass. Whenever success felt overwhelming, he would revisit the old neighborhood, walk past the building where it all started, not to feel pain, but to stay grounded. Because here is the truth: the higher you rise, the easier it is to forget who you were. and forgetting is the first step toward falling. As the empire stabilized and diversified into new industries, a new challenge emerged, something money alone could not solve. The challenge was identity. For years, survival had been his motivation. Then growth became his obsession. But once financial security was unquestionable, he had to redefine himself. Who is a man when he no longer needs to prove anything? Who is he without the pressure of scarcity pushing him forward? Many wealthy entrepreneurs lose direction at this stage. Comfort replaces hunger. Risk-taking declines. Purpose fades. He refused that fate. Instead of slowing down, he expanded his thinking. He studied long-term global markets, renewable energy, artificial intelligence, infrastructure. He wanted to build companies that would shape the next generation of Canada's economy, not just profit from it. He launched innovation funds, partnered with universities, invested in research labs. He believed Canada had untapped potential, immigrant talent, small-town resilience, diverse perspectives. He wanted to amplify that strength. But growth at this level requires courage again. Large investments carry larger consequences. Mistakes scale just like success. Late one night, reviewing a billion-dollar proposal, he paused. The numbers were intimidating. The risk was massive. It felt strangely familiar, like placing his first risky advertisement years ago. And once again, he had to decide whether fear would guide him or belief. He chose belief. The investment reshaped industries. Within a few years, his diversified holdings spanned technology, logistics, clean energy, and digital infrastructure. Analysts began referring to him not just as a businessman, but as a builder of ecosystems. His wealth multiplied again. But what mattered more was influence. Policies began shifting around sectors he helped modernize. Thousands of jobs were created. Canadian innovation received global recognition. Yet behind the polished headlines, he maintained a routine that would surprise most people: early mornings, physical training, reading for at least an hour daily, weekly reflection sessions without devices, structured planning. He treated self-discipline like a non-negotiable contract. Because he understood something simple: success compounds, but so does complacency. He mentored young founders personally, not through speeches, but through honest conversations about sacrifice. He told them about missed birthdays, about exhaustion, about doubt. He refused to sell them a fantasy. He wanted them to understand the cost before chasing the reward. And as his empire reached levels that positioned him among the richest men in Canada, a deeper question began forming inside him. What does legacy really mean? Legacy, he realized, is not measured in billions. It is measured in permanence. He began planning beyond his lifetime: foundation structures, long-term charitable trusts, leadership succession strategies. He wanted the empire to survive without his daily presence. He wanted the impact to outlive his name. He quietly funded mental health programs for immigrant families adjusting to Canadian life. He built community centers in neighborhoods that reminded him of his childhood. He sponsored entrepreneurship programs in public schools where students rarely imagined becoming CEOs. But perhaps the most powerful decision he made was personal. He forgave the past. He forgave the years of struggle, the humiliation, the fear. He stopped seeing poverty as an enemy and started seeing it as his greatest teacher. Because without those winters, he would not have developed resilience. Without those empty pockets, he would not have learned value. Without rejection, he would not have built endurance. Standing alone one evening, overlooking the city skyline he once dreamed of surviving in, he felt something rare: peace. But the story was not ending. Because true legacy is not about how high one man rises, it is about how many others rise because he did. By his early 40s, he was officially recognized as one of Canada's richest men. News outlets debated his strategies. Financial analysts studied his decisions. Universities invited him to speak about leadership and innovation. But whenever he walked into those auditoriums filled with young faces, he did not see admiration. He saw potential. He saw versions of himself, insecure, uncertain, underestimated. During one speech at a public university in Toronto, he told the students something unexpected. "Money was never the goal," he said calmly. "Freedom was." The room fell silent. He explained how real wealth is not luxury cars or private jets. It is the ability to choose your time, to choose your impact, to choose who you become. He described the early mornings in freezing apartments, the humiliation of being ignored in business meetings, the fear of making payroll during his first year as a founder. He did not glamorize the struggle, he respected it, because struggle, when handled with discipline, builds structure inside a person. After the speech, a student approached him with tears in his eyes and said, "I feel invisible in this country." He placed a hand on the young man's shoulder and replied, "So did I. Use it as fuel." That moment mattered more than stock valuations. But as his influence expanded beyond business and international conversations, he faced a new responsibility, shaping not just companies, but culture. And that would require a different kind of strength. Influence can be dangerous if it is not anchored in values. He understood that wealth amplifies whatever already exists inside a person. If ego exists, it grows. If integrity exists, it strengthens. So he doubled down on character. He built advisory circles not filled with praise, but with people willing to challenge him. Economists, community leaders, educators, former critics. He invested heavily in small Canadian startups from underrepresented communities. Not because it looked good, but because he remembered how hard access to capital had been for him. He created transparent funding structures that removed unnecessary barriers. He wanted talent, not privilege, to determine success. At home, he maintained simple habits. Family dinners without phones, long walks, regular visits to his mother, who still lived modestly by choice. She would remind him, "Stay small inside." And he listened. One winter evening, he returned to the old neighborhood again. Snow fell softly, just like the day he arrived in Canada as a child. He stood there quietly, not as the scared immigrant boy, but as proof of possibility. But even as he reflected on how far he had come, a deeper truth settled within him. The greatest return on investment is not profit. It is people. And now he was ready to build something even more powerful than an empire. He launched a national mentorship initiative aimed at young entrepreneurs from low-income and immigrant backgrounds across Canada. It wasn't a marketing campaign. It wasn't a press strategy. It was structured, long-term, measurable. Access to training, seed funding, leadership coaching, mental resilience workshops. He personally reviewed early applicants. He saw himself in their essays, the fear, the hunger, the determination. The first cohort struggled, some failed, some pivoted, some almost quit. And he told them what no one had told him early on: failure is not the opposite of success. It is the foundation of it. Within 5 years, dozens of businesses born from that initiative were thriving. Jobs were created in communities once overlooked. Families gained stability. Confidence spread. That was the real multiplication effect. Standing at the annual summit of his foundation, watching hundreds of young founders networking with confidence, he felt something deeper than pride. He felt fulfillment. He had once been the boy looking for opportunity. Now he was building doors. And as the room buzzed with ambition and possibility, one final realization settled in his heart. The rise of one man matters, but the rise of many changes a nation. If you had seen him as a child, standing in that cold apartment with second-hand clothes and uncertain eyes, you would never have predicted this ending. No connections, no inheritance, no safety net, just discipline, belief, and relentless action. He did not become one of Canada's richest men overnight. He became it one decision at a time, one early morning at a time, one uncomfortable risk at a time. He chose growth when comfort was easier. He chose responsibility when excuses were available. He chose belief when doubt was louder. And that is the real message of this story. It is not about billions. It is about becoming the kind of person capable of building billions. The same country that once felt intimidating became the land where his character was forged. Canada did not guarantee his success, but it rewarded his discipline. If you feel unseen, underestimated, behind, remember this: your current situation is not your final identity. Somewhere inside you is the same power, the ability to build structure, to stay consistent, to endure winter seasons without quitting. The rise of one of Canada's richest men did not begin with money. It began with a decision. And maybe tonight you are one decision away from beginning your own rise.